Okay, let's talk about the box office from this past weekend. The total domestic total. $101 million for the weekend, and this actually amounts to a 4.7% jump. And I believe the weekend prior was also a jump. So again, we're moving into that summer season. It's definitely been a slow summer season. We'll get into that in just a second. But it has been growing a little bit, right? Opening at number 1 is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This is like the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, the film from like a decade ago, and only bringing in about $26 million for the weekend. So I'm only looking at Friday through Sunday. I know technically it was a holiday weekend. I know a lot of places will look at, the long weekend numbers, but since I do this on Mondays, I'm really just going to try to look at like as if it was a normal weekend. But even just taking out, even considering that, this was a little bit of a disappointment. I had projected that this would make anywhere from 39 to 49 million for the weekend, and this is so definitely fell below. And I think I've been reading article after article, at least seeing the headlines for them, that this entire Memorial Day weekend, even including, again, that actual Memorial Day, actually including today, this is like one of the worst Memorial Day weekends for the American box office in like decades. So I'm not going to put the blame on Furiosa because, again, as we'll see, some other stuff kind of fell short as well. But again, compared to at least my projections of like 39 to 49 million, this is definitely below that. Again, also considering this was made for like $168 million. And it's only made about 59 million worldwide. So even bringing in the international box office here, again, it's like a third of its budget. So it still has a long way to go to break even. I have heard phenomenal things about this movie. I have not ever seen a Mad Max film. It's kind of something that I just have never gotten around to watching. And I would have gone to see this for review. But since there's so many other films in the franchise, I just don't really have like that time right now to do that. And you might be saying, but Peter, it's really just a prequel to Fury Road. Just watch Fury Road. I'm a completionist. I don't want to watch Fury Road until I watch the other Mad Max films. Also looking here at Garfield, the Garfield movie, not to be confused with lowercase t, lowercase m, the Garfield movie, as in Garfield from like when I was growing up. The Garfield movie coming in at number 2, bringing in about 25 million. So basically tied, it was like people weren't sure which was going to win out. So this brought in 25. This had a more humble projection of about like 31 to 40 million. But again, that still isn't it's still an underperforming, right? But also at the same time, a much lower budget. So this was made for maybe like a third of what Furiosa was made for. It was made for about 60 million. And this movie has made like a gajillion-ish dollars internationally. So its worldwide total is 98 million. So it seems to be playing very well outside of the United States. I'm not sure. I would have to confirm. I don't think it opened like weeks before in other countries. So I don't know if that's like this seems to be its opening weekend, international opening weekend number. So that's going to at least bring in a decent amount of money to the studio, but it's again still underperforming considering what people were expecting. Another movie opening this week is a more small film at number 7, Sight, bringing in only about 2.7 million. There's not really much to say about this. I'm going to predict right now this won't make it into the top 10 next week. It will drop out very quickly. In terms of films continuing this week, at number 3, we have If in its second weekend, only bringing in about 16 million. So if you remember from last week, that also kind of underperformed or like just barely made it into the projection. So it was definitely not a great, again, summer blockbuster-y movie. And it's dropped from first to third place in its second frame. This was a 52% drop, which I anticipated. Again, because it has not been getting particularly great reviews. They're not awful by any means, but just kind of everyone's just saying it's fine. And considering the box office, results from last weekend, this is not surprising. This so far brings its domestic total to 64 million and its worldwide total to 104, off of a $110 million budget. So again, there's still a bit of a way to go there to kind of break even on this. But it's interesting to see. Ryan Reynolds, I feel like Hollywood really likes Ryan Reynolds. and just wants to keep trying to make Ryan Reynolds happen, and that was, and if you look at Ryan Reynolds' career, it's kind of done this kind of up and down kind of trajectory where he's like really hot and then he's kind of cools off and then he gets really hot again and then cools off. And I feel like now he's maybe like hot again in the sense of like he's in a lot of stuff, he's in a lot of big stuff, and then it just kind of doesn't perform well. I think people are kind of tired of like the Ryan Reynolds shtick, perhaps. I mean, I don't know if you can blame If's underperformance on Ryan Reynolds solely, but seeing as he is the primary live action character in that film, I think it's worth kind of looking at, is the Ryan Reynolds factor actually bringing it down when it's ostensibly a children's film, and the people who most like Ryan Reynolds' shtick are older men who like it when he's able to be really edgy and inappropriate and sardonic and things like that, right? Also continuing in their second weekend is The Strangers Chapter 1 at number 6, bringing in $5.6 million. It dropped from 3rd to 6th place in its second frame, and this constitutes also a 53% drop. So again, I also said this as well. This has not been getting good reviews, so I'm not surprised that this has dropped so much. But again, it was only made for $8.5 million. So, it's made about $23 million domestically, and then just a smidge more, $24 million worldwide. So this is easily made back its budget. So again, it's the classic horror movie business model. You make it for really cheap, even if it's not particularly great. Usually you can make on an X amount of, you can expect kind of like a base floor of like what it's going to make. And if you can keep the budget low enough, then it'll always be profitable, even if it doesn't really set the world on fire, so to speak, right? Also continuing in its second week, Back to Black. So this is a, huge, not disappointing to me, but just like a disappointment, if you're the ones who like made this film, right? Because last week it had a very, I don't want to say pathetic, that's kind of me, but kind of a very disappointing, very pitiful opening weekend. Definitely fell below projections. It's not been getting good reviews. So not only was it opened in 6th last weekend, it's now at 9th in its second frame. This was a 61% drop. This brings its domestic total to about 5.2 million domestically and 44 million worldwide. So as you can notice there, like I think it's been in England and other countries for like a couple weeks, if not more, by this point. So that worldwide box office is going to be primarily, the domestic total is really just a sliver of like the total pie here. But again, it's just, it's definitely has become a, I don't see this lasting I don't see this staying in the top 10 next week. But I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe something like Sight having a big drop, Back to Black will be able to kind of maybe at least maintain that 9th place spot or something. I don't know. But again, this is really just completely fizzled out. And then also continuing this week is number 10, Babes, a kind of comedy with Alana Glazer from Broad City, bringing about 1.06 million, and actually jumped from 10th to from 18th place to 10th place in its second week, and that's because it opened in just 12 theaters, and this weekend it's not quite wide. Technically, a wide release would be 600 theaters or more, but it went from 12 theaters to 590 theaters, right? So because of that, you have like a 550% jump. And this brings its domestic and worldwide total, because I don't think it's even opened outside the United States yet, if it's going to at all. It brings its total to about 1.5 million. So interesting to see this film again get that boost from going basically wide, but not technically. And it'll be interesting to see if maybe it can stay. But again, I don't see this being able to stay. Just a couple other notable things here. At number 4, we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes bringing in 13 million. It dropped from 2nd to 4th place, now in its 3rd frame. A 48% drop. So this is definitely one of the bigger movies of the year so far. That's not necessarily saying much, but there have been a few big hits this year. This brings its domestic total to 127 million, and its worldwide total to 299 million off of a $160 million budget. So it's definitely getting close to basically breaking even. And if it can kind of have some legs as we go through the summer season, again, every amount of money is better than nothing. And maybe it may fall short of your expectations, but if you made $1, that's $1 more than you more than you had the day before, right? So I could definitely see this being like kind of a sleeper hit, maybe, or I'm completely wrong. Who's to say? So we also have The Fall Guy here in number 5, in the 5th place spot, bringing in $5.9 million for the weekend, dropped from 4th to 5th place in its 4th frame, but still in the top 5. Because I remember we talked about that also did not open particularly strong. I believe, if my memory serves me right, it did fall within the projections, but like just barely missed it. And then had a pretty big drop. And I know it's about to go to streaming very soon, or like digital at least. And I know people have been complaining, like, there's a reason why the box office has been hurting is because basically during COVID, we trained audiences, like, just wait a couple of weeks. If you can wait a couple of weeks, it'll be on digital, and that's how most people would rather watch these movies anyway. So we'll see. I'm not sure when that's happening. It might be, like, literally within the week or so. But again, this was only a 29% drop. So far it's made about $74 million domestically and $146 million worldwide. That's not awful, right? I think... and I guess you could lump me into this, but I've only been doing the show for like a couple of months, and also I feel like I try to give like a full picture of the success of these films. But as a society, at least in the United States, in the industry, we really care about that opening weekend. But there have been plenty of instances of really, really financially successful movies that did not have good openings, and they just had a steady, performance over weeks and weeks, months and months, especially if you want to go back decades and decades when films were in theaters for months and months, right? So maybe the Fall Guys, it's one single Fall Guy, let's be clear. Maybe the Fall Guy will be able to kind of maintain enough momentum to just kind of slowly but surely build up that box office. And we saw that near the end of last year, going into this year with films like Anyone But You, I feel like is a great example. The romantic comedy with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. I don't know if that opened super well, but just that film in general on paper should not have made as much money as it did, right? That was very, very successful financially. This movie, of course, is a lot more expensive than a film like that. But again, maybe there's an opportunity here for a film like this to kind of just slow and steady wins the race, right? One last thing I want to note here is Challengers at number 8, bringing in just a very humble $1.4 million. Dropped from 5th to 8th place in its 5th frame, so it's been over a month now since it came out. This constitutes about like a 52% drop, so again, not great, but also at this point, it has been out for enough time that, again, I think everyone who really wanted to see it has gone to see it, unfortunately, which sucks because it's a really great movie. This brings its total to about $47 million domestically, $82 million worldwide, off of a $55 million budget, which again isn't quite breaking even, and I'm going to predict that it doesn't do that. I don't know if it's going to have the legs to kind of get up to cross the century mark, as they say, get over 100 million. But I think this movie did exactly what it was set out to do, which is to be an art film, and be a showcase for a director and a showcase for the actor. So, I think this is not the end of the Challengers story. I think this could be a big awards contender. If it can't manage the box office momentum, maybe it can at least manage the critical acclaim momentum that it received when it first came out.